Antares charges a blast when his mouth is suddenly wrapped shut. Looking down, he sees Belian reeling him in as giants reach for the dragon and pin his neck to the ground. Tusk casts a telekinetic spell and slams his hand down further, pinning the massive Monarch. Beru and Greed jump up and zoom down, smashing into the dragon's face, while Igris stands atop his head, stabbing his blade and electrocuting Antares. Jin flies above, thinking that it's working pretty well, but the Monarch calls it amusing as he likes fights where he overwhelms the enemy with a significant difference in numbers. But he does find the opposite situation quite amusing. Jin spooks as Antares uses the true dragon fear. Shockwaves blow through the battlefield, pressuring shadows, as Jin realizes that the dragon fear attack from the King of the Dragons is disabling his control over the shadow soldiers and cancels summon. Charging up an attack, he fires an epically massive blast beam. Kaisel returns to the abyss as Jin screams for him to come back. The beam goes through the mountain, clears the whole island, and explodes miles offshore. The Monarch stands tall, making clear this is the real thing. The avatar of destruction, who doesn't hesitate to sacrifice oneself for the sake of a raging war. The amalgam of blood, scream, madness, and destruction. A being created solely for the purpose of war. That is he, Antares, the King of Dragons and the Monarch of Destruction. Jin thinks that the enormous amount of mana from when the King of Giants died must have sunk into the ground, and yet it didn't last against that attack. Even undying soldiers would perish immediately if they were to take a direct hit of his breath. Antares transforms, while telling the Shadow Monarch that he doesn't need to be nervous. When Jin grabbed his arm, he could have easily broken free, but he didn't, because Jin impressed him by driving him into a corner. And as a fellow monarch, he wanted to have a quiet conversation with him. If Jin Wu has inherited the previous Shadow Monarch's memories, then he must already know that their ultimate enemy isn't this world, but exists beyond the skies. The army of the rulers. Their only meaning in existence is to destroy the monarchs who were born within darkness, and the Shadow Monarch is not an exception to this. He was planning on eliminating him and preparing to fight with them, but he's changed his mind after seeing how Jin fights. He possesses a different set of talents compared to Ashbourne, and he saw their glorious victory using his talents. He tells Jin that if he wants him to let his family live, he will do so, and if he wants to preserve his country, he will do so as well. If he wishes for him and his soldiers to depart from this land, he will leave quietly, become the owner of this land. And he's not talking about the castle in the hills. He means the owner of the entire planet. He possesses such qualifications. Holding out his hand, Jin looks at it, then his face, as Antares says that all he has to do is hold his hand. If they combine forces to defeat the soldiers of the rulers, his family, country, and this entire planet will regain peace and freedom. How about it, he asks. Jin opens his mouth before telling him not to make him laugh. He's expected to believe him when his eyes are screaming that he wants to kill Jin. Laughing as Jin prepares, Antares guesses that he couldn't hide it, and this was his final mercy to him. This arc continues.